Chapter 424. Shiju's face darkened. What spy? The most important rule for anyone who works for the ancestor is to sever all ties with their own sect or country. During this period, they are not allowed to have any contact with their family. Violators will be immediately expelled from the Sun-Moon sect. So abnormal. Severing ties with family is even stricter than becoming a monk. There's actually such an abnormal rule. I'm afraid these girls are not willing, right? Shiju smiled bitterly. You're wrong. They're very willing. For such a limited number of places, they're fighting to the death. Those who can go are all top figures. Running for this position is 100 times more difficult than becoming a disciple of the Sun-Moon sect. These girls will be changed every 3 years. So it's only 3 years of work. After 3 years, they can go back to their families? Of course. After 3 years, even if they don't want to, they have to come back. Because this is the ancestors' iron rule. No one can violate it. That's not bad. However, since they've been working for the ancestor for such a long time, they should have a lot of contact with him, right? They should also know a lot about the Sun-Moon sect. Ning Xuema guessed. Even the most mysterious sect, if one stayed in the core group for 3 years, they would more or less understand it. Shiju shook his head. When they came back, they didn't mention anything about the Sun-Moon sect. It seems that they have forgotten everything about the ancestor. Once, someone wanted to know more about the ancestor from their mouths, and specially sent a high-level hypnotist to hypnotize them. However, it was useless. They only vaguely remember that they were working for the ancestor, but they forgot what the ancestor looked like. Perhaps they have never seen him before. Forgotten? Could it be that their memories were erased? Or perhaps they were given some kind of forgetful drug. Ning Xuema's heart moved. She blurted out. Do you think the ancestor and them had something? The ancestor was afraid that it would affect his image, so he made them lose their memories? Shiju's face darkened. He said impolitely. What kind of mess is your head full of? The ancestor wouldn't be so tasteless. Those girls are called saintesses. When they go, they are virgins. When they come back, they are still virgins. They can still marry. Moreover, they are all outstanding talents. Okay, she was thinking the wrong way. It seemed like the ancestor just didn't want these women to spread the news about the Sun-Moon sect. He had no other intentions. She paused and suddenly looked up at Shiju. Why are you suddenly talking about them? What does that have to do with me? Shiju coughed and said, I just want to prove that the ancestor is not this Han Shangyue. Just think about it. Even the most inconspicuous maids around the ancestor are all geniuses with noble statuses. If he wanted a concubine, the conditions would be even higher. He was afraid that if he let out the slightest bit of news, there would be a large number of people crying and begging to marry him. Why would he need to go to such great lengths to scheme against you? Ning Xuema. She cast a sidelong glance at him. Do you mean that I'm not worth his scheming? He gave me a concubine, and I still have to be grateful to him. Shiju had a headache. I'm talking about Dizun. Dizun wouldn't be so bored. As for Han Shangyue, it was hard to say. The ancestor was the guardian of this continent. How could he have the time to care about the mortal world? Not to mention using such despicable methods to scheme against you and make you a concubine. Moreover, I also received accurate news that the ancestor is still a guest in Aquamarine. It is impossible for him to come here. Therefore, this Han Shangyue is definitely not him. Chapter 425. It's not him. Ning Xuema pondered for a while. It really didn't seem to be him. Although the two of them had similar temperaments, Dizun seemed to be colder. He was the kind that carried a strong chill even in the summer. Han Shanyue's was not as serious. More importantly, Dizun's eyes were black while Han Shanyue's were dark blue. He couldn't be like the modern people and wear cosmetic contact lenses, right? Then what kind of power was behind Han Shanyue? It was so secretive and so strong. It seemed like it was not inferior to the top sections. Why did he deliberately want to marry her as a concubine? She really couldn't think of anything that could make him covet her. She was pondering when Shijue suddenly grabbed her hand. Shijue's voice was a little anxious. Don't think about these useless things now. Take advantage of the night and leave with me. Leave with him? Leaving with him would only implicate him. He was only the wise king's heir, not the wise king. He had a fiery heart, but he didn't have strong wings to protect her. If she really left with him, not only would she implicate him and cause him to lose his position as the wise king's heir, she would also be hunted down by both the wise king residents and Chongkong country. The far-sighted king's people would never allow their crown prince to get together with a jinx with a notorious reputation. By then, she would face more pressure and be in more danger. Shijue, how did you get rid of the guards that were following you? Ning Xuema suddenly asked. Shijue didn't hesitate. Getting rid of them wasn't too difficult. I used the excuse of going to the toilet. Suddenly he realized something and frowned. Xuema, why are you asking this? Ning Xuema sighed. You came to find me without telling the wise king residents, right? Shijue was speechless for a moment. He paused for a moment before saying, why would I need their permission to do anything? They are just guards. But they represent your father's generation, and are following your father's orders. I'm sorry, Shijue, I can't implicate you. I can't leave with you. Ning Xuema broke free from Shijue's hand and stepped back to sit on the chair. Shijue was anxious. What do you mean by implicating me? I'm not afraid of being implicated. Follow me. Do you really want to marry that pervert? He took a step forward and pulled her again. Whoosh! A streak of faint red flew in from outside the door, brushing past Shiju's fingertips and hitting the teacup on the table. With a loud bang, the teacup that Ning Xuema had brought to Shijue was smashed into pieces. Shijue was taken aback. He subconsciously glanced over and found that the thing that broke the teacup was actually a soft leaf. It was stuck on the table like a trembling butterfly. Who trespassed into Miss Ning's residence? Shiju's duty as a guard was taken over, and he forgot his identity for a moment. With a flash of his figure, he had already passed through the door. Ning Xuema's expression changed, and she hurriedly followed him out. There was a maple tree in the corner of her yard. It was already autumn. The maple leaves were red, as bright as fire. On one of the thin branches of the maple tree sat a man in a moonlight robe. His hair was like ink satin and his clothes were like fine clouds. In his hand was a white jade flute. The wind blew his black hair and white robe, making the brilliant maple tree dim in an instant. It was as if the moonlight in the sky only flowed for him. Han Shangyue. When Shijue saw him, his expression changed slightly. Mr. Han, what are you doing here in Miss Ning's room so late at night? Chapter 426. Han Shangyue glanced at him and ignored him. His eyes fell on Ning Xuema. Come here. Ning Xuema frowned and did not move. Mr. Han, your courtyard is next door. You seem to have come to the wrong place. Han Shangyue looked at her with a smile. You are my future concubine. Other men can enter your room, but I can't? There was a hint of teasing in this sentence, but there was also a hint of coldness. Ning Xuema's heart sank. Although Han Shangyue did not show much expression, she still felt that this guy was angry. This person did not make a move, but once he made a move, it would be thunderous. Then Shijue. She immediately stood in front of Shiju and looked up at Han Shangyue who was sitting there. He is my guard, not some other man. Han Shangyue looked at her standing in front of Shijue, like an old hen protecting her chicks. His eyes darkened, but his words were calm. Guard? Now he is? Now he is not. Ning Xuema took a breath, and was about to say something. Shijue, who was behind her, said proudly, as long as Xuema agrees, I can also be her guard now. Han Shangyue's eyes were deep and unfathomable. He said lightly, you are willing to be her guard? I can let you stay and be her guard forever. The jade flute in his hand spun slowly, and there were strands of white light condensing at the tip of the flute. Ning Xuema's face changed. She knew Han Shangyue's ability. Even 100 Shijue would not be his opponent. His words were not good. Once he had the intention to kill Shijue, Shijue would not be able to walk out of this courtyard. In a panic, she rushed towards Han Shangyue. She jumped onto the branch under his feet and tried to grab his jade flute. We are just friends, nothing else. Her position was extremely tricky, and it blocked all the possible directions for Han Shangyue to attack Shijue. It made him unable to make a move. Han Shanyue's eyes flashed, and he raised his arm. Ning Xiuema did not manage to grab his jade flute, but instead grabbed the ribbon around his waist. It was also at this moment that the soft branch under his feet broke with a crack, because of the extra person's weight. His and her body suddenly sank down. Almost reflexively, Ning Xiuema hugged his waist. Han Shanyue, on the other hand, grabbed her with his left arm, and with a slight turn of his body, he had already moved to another branch. The faint fragrance was intoxicating like the fragrance of flowers. By the time Ning Xiuemo reacted, she realized that not only was she hugging his waist, but her head was also buried in his chest. She could even hear the steady heartbeat in his chest. She subconsciously raised her head and looked into a pair of eyes that were as deep as the sea. He lowered his eyes to look at her, and a smile flashed across his lips. I asked you to come over just now, but you didn't. Now you're throwing yourself into my arms? Throw myself into your arms. Throw myself into your arms. Ning Xiuemo regained her senses and hurriedly let go of his waist, wanting to retreat to another branch. But Han Shanyue's arm tightened, and she could not help but fall back onto his chest. Her nose hit his chest, and it was sore and painful. She angrily raised her head, and was about to reprimand him. Han Shanyue's eyes deepened, and he spoke again. It's rare for you to be so passionate. Suddenly he lowered his head, and a faint scent similar to that of sandalwood suddenly approached her. In front of Ning Xiuema's wide-open eyes, he kissed her slightly parted red lips. Chapter 427. Ning Xiuema's body froze as if she was struck by lightning. He actually took the initiative to kiss her. Wasn't he a clean freak? Didn't he slap people onto the street after being kissed? What was wrong with him today? Was there water in his brain? Although his kiss was as light as a feather, Ning Xiuema was still angry when she reacted. In a fit of anger, she raised her hand and slapped his handsome face. Damn it. She wanted to take revenge for being slapped onto the street. Her hand was fast, but her palm was intercepted by his hand before it could reach him. With just a turn, her body was once again enveloped in his embrace. Her wrist was also grasped by his hand, and he gently tugged it. She couldn't help but bump into him again. This time, she bumped right into his face. Her lips coincidentally landed on his lips. Damn it! Why was there such a melodramatic situation today? Ning Xiuema wanted to raise her head, but his hand was fixed at the back of her head. Her lips were still on his and she couldn't move. You! Ning Xiuema shouted angrily. When she opened her mouth, his lips almost slipped into her mouth. She quickly closed her mouth and stared at him with her eyes wide open. He also looked at her. Their lips were connected, but their eyes were staring at each other like fighting cocks. This position was indescribably strange. Ning Xiuema gritted her teeth and snorted. Bastard, let go of me. She couldn't speak clearly. Han Shanyue's hand loosened slightly. Finally, their lips separated. The distance between them was really too close. Ning Xiuema's charming face finally turned red. Han Shanyue's eyes were fixed on her face. Her every expression didn't escape his eyes. He looked at her calmly and touched her face with his fingers. Your face is red. And what did you say just now? Ning Xiuema tried her best to lean back and put some distance between them. Bastard, let go of me. All right. Han Shanyue readily agreed and suddenly let go. At this time, the two of them were still standing on the weak maple branch. When he suddenly let go, Ning Xiuema did not control her body well, and fell straight down. Fortunately, the tree wasn't very tall, and she managed to adjust her body mid-air, so she didn't fall. She only staggered a few steps before she steadied herself. After she stood still, she was furious. She glared at Pia Piao, who was standing on the tree. She couldn't help but curse. Are you crazy? Han Shanyue looked down at her and said lazily, I heard that someone called me a pervert. Ning Xiuema. How much did he hear about her conversation with Shijue? When she thought of Shijue, she subconsciously looked around, but the courtyard was already empty. Where was Shijue? Where's Shijue? Left? When did he leave? There's no need to look for him. He left. Han Shanyue said lazily from the tree. Ning Xuema sighed in relief. If Shijue stayed here, it would only make the situation worse. It was good that he left in time. Otherwise, Han Shanyue wouldn't be in a good mood and kill him. In order to prevent Han Shanyue from thinking about what happened today, Ning Xuema opened her mouth to explain, "There's really nothing between him and me. I only see him as my younger brother. If there's anything between you and him, do you think he can just leave like that?" Han Shanyue replied carelessly. His tone was so arrogant that it made people want to beat him up. Chapter 428. Ning Xuemo raised her head and looked at him. Suddenly, her lips curled into a smile. "Your pants are torn." Han Shanyue froze. From where Ning Xuemo was standing, she could see his pants under his robe. Was it really torn? Why didn't he feel anything? He subconsciously wanted to lift up his robe to take a look, but he seemed to have thought of something and stopped. His fingers held the jade flute and his legs straightened. His body was stiff for a moment. Ning Xuemo rarely saw his embarrassed appearance. Her heart that had been depressed for a long time felt a little better. She smiled and no longer paid attention to him. She turned around and entered the house. After she entered the house, she looked out of the window again. Han Shanyue's shadow had disappeared from the big tree. He must have gone back to his courtyard to check his pants. She couldn't help but smile. But halfway through, her smile disappeared and she sighed. Although her escape plan was well planned, she was afraid that it would not be so easy to meet Han Shanyue. She gently touched her lips and thought of the short kiss that she had with him. Her fingers slowly clenched. This was actually her first kiss with a grown man. How could she lose her first kiss just like that? Damn it! She had never tasted the kind of feeling described in novels when two lovers kissed. Her heart raced like thunder, and the feeling of heavenly thunder stirring up the earth fire. It was already late at night. There were very few people on the street. Shijue flew on the street. His heart was burning like a fire. The image of Han Shanyue hugging Ning Xuema and kissing her appeared in front of his eyes. At that time, he heard the sound of his heart shattering. He wanted to rush over regardless of anything. But he didn't expect that the person who was hugging the beauty with one hand and the other hand just waved at him casually. It was as if his body was fixed in place and he couldn't move at all. He finally understood that his martial arts was like an ant trying to shake a big tree. He couldn't move at all. He hadn't even made a move, and he had already been defeated. He also finally understood that with Han Shanyue in front of him, it was no doubt a fool's dream to take Ning Xuema away. And he didn't want to see the scene of Han Shanyue and Ning Xuema being intimate on the big tree. So when he regained his freedom, he turned around and left without saying a word. As her personal shadow guard, he couldn't save her from the devil's side. Shiju only felt an unprecedented defeat. As he ran, he saw an unfinished tavern. Without saying a word, he barged in and slapped the counter in front of the tavern owner, who was about to fall asleep. With a loud bang, the owner of the tavern almost jumped up in shock. "Shopkeeper, give me 10 caddies of wine and 2 caddies of beef." Shiju ordered loudly. He urgently needed to use wine to douse the fire in his heart. Just as he was about to find a table, he turned his head and saw a person sitting at a table in the corner. He was slightly stunned. Ji Yinhuang. Why was the vast Sky Empire's crown prince here? There were so many tables and benches in the tavern, but he didn't sit. Instead, he chose to sit in the most remote corner. At this moment, Ji Yinhuang should be half drunk. Even though Shiju had made such a big commotion, he didn't even look up and continued to drink cup after cup of wine. There were so many dishes in front of him, but he didn't even touch them. Instead, he drank 3 or 4 jugs of wine. Ji Yinhuang was indeed a member of the imperial family. He was clearly a little drunk, but when he drank, his posture was still elegant and noble. Not knowing why, Shiju remembered what Ning Xuema said about Han Shanyue's noble aura that was even more noble than the imperial family. His heart felt even more uncomfortable. Chapter 429. It was rumored that this crown prince was obsessed with cleanliness and never ate outside food. Why was he drinking so happily in this shabby tavern today? He walked over with large strides. Drinking alone in the middle of the night is boring. Why don't I drink with you? Do you mind if we share a table? As he asked, he had already sat down opposite Ji Yinshu. Ji Yinhuang raised his head to look at him. Looking at him from such a close distance, he really did drink too much. His eyes were already red from drinking, and he actually did not recognize Shijue, the wise king's heir. He only raised his hand and said, "Please," before downing the wine in one gulp. It seemed that he really only needed a drinking buddy, and did not care who was sitting opposite him. If it was in the past, when Shijue met the drunk Ji Yinhuang, he would definitely try to dig out some secrets of the vast Sky Empire. However, he was not in the mood now and only wanted to drink. He filled his own cup and said, "Please," before downing the cup. This wine was ordinary, inferior and spicy. Once the cup went down his throat, the heat rolled down his esophagus and rushed into his empty stomach, making him feel a little hot. Shijue had lived a life of luxury since young. After drinking this kind of wine, he could not help but frown. He looked at Ji Yinhuang and saw that he was drinking cup after cup happily, as if he was not drinking strong wine but sweet spring water. After drinking a few cups, he even praised, "Good wine." This was considered good wine. Shijue was speechless. He did not want to drink this kind of inferior wine. Ji Yinhuang raised his head to look at him and laughed. "Little brother, you don't even dare to drink this wine? Are you still a man? If you don't want to drink, then leave." A youth of Shijue's age could not stand being provoked. He immediately sneered. "Why wouldn't I dare to drink? I think this wine cup is too small. Drinking is not refreshing. Shopkeeper, change to a bigger bowl. We'll use a bigger bowl." These two men were not people to be trifled with, so the shopkeeper did not dare to persuade them and changed their bowls with a bitter face. The two of them drank from one bowl to the other. When they drank too much, even the best wine would taste like plain water in their mouths. Of course, no matter how bad the wine was, it didn't taste that bad. After drinking more than 10 bowls of wine, Shijue's eyes were already a little dizzy. In his drunken eyes, Ning Xiuema's figure kept swaying in front of his eyes. "Xiuema," he murmured. He felt as if his heart was being twisted. It was the first time the youth tasted love, and he encountered such a messy situation that he didn't know what to do. The person opposite him suddenly grabbed his collar and said, "You're not allowed. You're not allowed to say her name." Shiju was also unhappy and threw a punch over. "I like to call you that. You don't mind me." Bang. He didn't know where he had hit, but the man finally let go of his collar and threw a punch at him. Just like that, the two of them started fighting. Both of them were drunk, so they fought without any rhyme or reason. It was like a fight between drunkards on the street. "If you punch me a few times, I'll return the favor with a few kicks. If my hair is messy and my clothes are loose, I'll give you a black eye and kick you until you roll on the ground." The tables, chairs and stools in the tavern fell one after another, and the sound of shattering could be heard. The tavern owner complained incessantly. The two drunkards' punches were so fierce that an ordinary person like him couldn't even get a foot in. Chapter 430. The two drunkards' fists were so fierce that an ordinary person like him couldn't even get close to them. After a moment of hesitation, a big bowl flew over and covered his head with soup and water. The innkeeper finally got angry and ran out to report this to the authorities. These few days, the security in the capital was extremely tight, and the soldiers patrolling at night were also very dense. Thus, the innkeeper quickly found a team. When the leader heard that there was a fight, he immediately led a team of soldiers to arrest them. The soldiers were like wolves and tigers as they swarmed in. The leader was about to shout and show off, but the moment he saw the face of one of them, he knelt down with a thud. "Your Highness the Crown Prince." When the official knelt down, the other soldiers naturally knelt down as well. The innkeeper was also dumbfounded. The person in front of him who was beaten black and blue and whose breath reeked of alcohol was actually the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince who was untainted by the mortal world. This was too much of a challenge to his heart. However, this matter wasn't over yet. After the leader kowtowed to Ji Yinhuang, he immediately got up and ordered his men to arrest Shiju. This person actually dared to beat up the Crown Prince. He was really tired of living. However, before their soldiers could surround them, for guards dressed in black with embroidered clouds rushed in and knelt down in front of Shiju. "Your Highness the Crown Prince! Crown Prince!" Everyone was shocked. The leader of the guards waved a jade tablet in his hand. "We are from the Wise King Manor, and this is our Crown Prince. Whoever dares to be rude to him will be the enemy of the entire Wise King Manor." Whether it was the Crown Prince of Chong Kong Country, or the Crown Prince of Wise King Manor, they were not people that ordinary people could provoke. The two of them drank too much and fought. Moreover, their injuries were similar. The people on both sides looked at each other for a moment, and admitted that they were unlucky. They supported their masters and left. Only the innkeeper was left standing in front of a pile of debris. He was speechless. He originally had a small fortune, but the fight between these two noble young masters had destroyed more than half of his fortune. If these two were taken away, who would compensate for his loss? The innkeeper hugged his head and squatted down, unable to cry even if he wanted to. A pair of feet appeared in front of him, and a banknote floated down and landed at his feet. "This 1,000 taels of silver is to compensate for your loss." The tavern owner raised his head in surprise, but all he saw was a green figure drifting away. That person looked like he was strolling leisurely, but in a flash he disappeared into the street. The tavern owner's jaw dropped. Did he see a ghost? He picked up the banknotes on the ground and looked at them carefully. The banknotes were real. He could withdraw cash from any bank. 1,000 taels of silver was enough to compensate for his losses. Who was that person? Which young master did he represent? The tavern owner was confused, but he couldn't care less. "My lord, we've already pressured the far-sighted king's residence. The far-sighted king's crown prince has already been taken away by the far-sighted king's residence. He won't be back anytime soon." However, this subordinate saw His Highness the Crown Prince. He was actually drinking in a small tavern, and he was dead drunk. A subordinate's report came out of the sound transmission talisman. Han Shanhua was sitting on a chair. There was a painting on the table in front of him. The ink on the painting was still wet. It was obvious that it had just been completed. There was a woman in the painting. Her eyebrows were lively, and her red dress was like fire. She danced gracefully and played the pipa as if she was flying. She had both spirit and form. It was as if she could walk out of the painting and dance again if one blew on her. Chapter 431. The voice in the directed audio spell finally finished its report. Han Shanhua nodded and turned off the spell. He looked at the completed painting on the table again. His finger gently brushed the eyebrows of the woman in the painting, and his lips curled up. A smile flashed across his face. At dawn, Ning Xuema woke up. Just as she was about to tidy up, she heard music coming from outside. The music sounded like Buddhist music, with a calming effect. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat when she heard it. She didn't know why, but ever since she was young, she couldn't listen to Buddhist music. Other people could calm down when they listened to Buddhist music, but she was furious when she heard it. So when she listened to light music at home, she never listened to Buddhist music. Now that she heard it again, the anger in her heart wanted to come out again. She took a deep breath and suppressed her emotions. She calmed herself down and thought, what was going on? Was there someone performing a ritual on this street? Ning Xuema opened the door and came out. She was shocked when she walked out of her courtyard. Old Zhong was waiting outside with a group of newly dressed guards. All of them were in high spirits, and their faces were glowing. What was going on? Did something good happen to them? Ning Xuema was about to speak, but old Zhong stepped forward. "Master, the Taoist master invites you over." Wasn't he going to attend the ceremony? Why did he ask her to go over? Ning Xuema suddenly had a bad feeling, but she couldn't refuse. She had to go to Han Shanhua's courtyard. After seeing Han Shanhua, she knew his purpose. He actually asked her to go with him to the Taoist master's residence. He said he was going there to take a bath and change his clothes, and wanted her to serve him. Ning Xuema was naturally unwilling. She found an excuse to refuse. "Taoist master, you must have a lot of maids serving you. You don't need me. But you are the only concubine." Han Shanhua's words made her choke. Damn it. A concubine was not a maid. How could she serve him when he bathed and changed his clothes? Heavenly Master, I'm not your concubine yet. Can I stay by your side after we get married? No. But if I follow you now, people will criticize me. More importantly, it would delay her escape plan. Do you think you don't have enough criticism? I don't need this one. Han Shangyue was too lazy to argue with her, so he simply pulled her hand and walked away. Ning Xuema was speechless. She could not continue to push and pull with him here, so as not to provoke criticism. Moreover, she couldn't break free from his grip. Didn't this guy always have misophobia and disdain to have any physical contact with her? Why was he suddenly holding her hand this time? I haven't washed my hands. Ning Xuema wanted him to let go. Han Shanyue's fingers tightened slightly, but he had no intention of letting her go. He only replied, "Go to the Celestial Master's residence to wash." Don't you dislike physical contact with people? She refused to give up. You'll have to get used to it sooner or later. Han Shanyue replied casually. Ning Xuema. Her heart skipped a beat. Did he mean that he would often have physical contact with her in the future? That's right. The day after tomorrow was their wedding day. If that day really came, would he really want to consummate their marriage? Ning Xuema secretly shuddered. Her desire to escape became even stronger. Although her soul was that of an adult, this little body was actually that of a young girl who was not even 14 years old. Her development was not complete yet. If they consummated their marriage, it would be very painful. Chapter 432. She would not let him have the chance to ravage an underage girl. If she could not escape today, then she would escape tomorrow. Anyway, she still had time. Kiran was the kind of guy that would play the gong 9 times out of 10. It would go wherever there was a commotion. It came out of nowhere and jumped into Ning Xuema's arms. Master, I want to go too. Before its little claws could touch Ning Xuema's clothes, it was slapped away by Han Shanyue. Go take a bath. Kiran rolled on the ground, then jumped up and looked at Han Shanyue angrily. Its body was already clean enough. Why did he want it to take a bath? Han Shanyue looked at it coldly. Kiran seemed to shiver, and its blue fur stood up. It tucked its tail and ran to take a bath. Ning Xuema was a little curious. Did her Kiran suffer under Han Shanyue's hands? Why was it like a mouse seeing a cat when it saw him? Originally, Kiran liked to stick to her. At night, when it was sleeping, it would turn into a cat and lie by her feet. But ever since Master Han Shanyue came to her mansion, Kiran did not dare to stay by her side. At night, it would also obediently sleep in its own nest. These past few days, Ning Xuema had been preoccupied with a lot of things, so she didn't notice the little Qilint's mood. Now, she had doubts in her heart. She looked at Han Shanyue. Why is it so afraid of you? Did you teach it a lesson? Han Shanyue took large strides forward and did not answer her question. He only lightly said, Look at what you've taught a divine beast to look like? A cat? Ning Xuema was stunned. His tone sounded like he was blaming her for teaching Kiran the wrong things. TSK, Kiran was hers. What did it have to do with him what she taught it? It is yours and you are mine. Naturally, it is also mine. In the future, I will teach little Apple. Han Shanyue seemed to have seen through her thoughts. Ning Xuema smiled and said nothing more. She was going to take Kiran with her. Even if he wanted to discipline him, there was no way he was going to do so. The group of people went out in a mighty manner. Ning Xuema was even more surprised when she arrived outside the door. There was already a large group of people outside. There were imperial guards in bright armor, Taoist children in green Taoist robes, and young girls in linen robes with various magical artifacts in their hands. Line after line, they stood there respectfully. In the middle of them, there was a luxurious carriage pulled by 8 horses. At a glance, he actually couldn't see the end of the procession. On both sides of the procession, there were musicians playing faintly discernible classical tunes. At this moment, the Crown Prince, Ji Yinhuang, and various other officials were standing at the front of the procession. Seeing Han Shanyue and Ning Xuema coming out hand in hand, Ji Yinhuang's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. However, he immediately went forward and bowed to Han Shanyue with a smile. He said that he was under the orders of the emperor to invite the Heavenly Master back to the Heavenly Master residence to take a bath and change clothes before going to the heaven altar to worship the heavens. He said it completely in classical official language. Ning Xuema understood the general situation. Only now did she know that there were many ceremonies for the Heavenly Master to ascend the throne. It seemed that Chongkong country had put in a lot of effort to keep this great master. They did not hesitate to waste manpower and money to create such a big scene. She had not seen Ji Yinhuang for nearly 10 days. At this moment, he seemed to have lost some weight. There were faint dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that he did not sleep well these days. In public, Ning Xuema did not want to hold hands with this great master, especially in front of Ji Yinhuang. Chapter 433. In public, Ning Xuema did not want to hold hands with this great master, especially in front of Ji Yinhuang. She subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but Han Shanyue's grip on her fingers tightened. His fingers looked delicate, but they were extremely strong. Ning Xuema was unable to break free from his grip. Instead, her fingers started to hurt from his grip. Ning Xuema naturally did not want to pull with him here, so she could only let him hold her hand with a stiff face. After Ji Yinhuang finished his speech, he led the officials to make way for them. Han Shanyue nodded slightly and held Ning Xuema's hand as they walked towards the carriage. The road leading to the carriage was covered with a snow-white carpet, with officials standing on both sides. Ning Xuema followed Han Shanyue as they walked on the carpet. It felt like a celebrity walking on a red carpet, except there were flashing lights. This was not an ordinary luxurious scene. Although Ning Xuema was used to seeing the world, at this moment, she still felt a little nervous. She knew that Lu Hinti valued this new great master very much, but she did not expect it to be to this extent. Looking at this scene, it was almost comparable to the emperor's personal entourage. It was not much inferior to the emperor's travel. She glanced at Han Shanyue who was beside her. His face was very calm, as if he was used to this kind of extravagance and did not care at all. Was it because he practiced martial arts and did not express his emotions? Or was he already used to this kind of extravagance? The first one meant that he was very scheming. The second one meant that his identity was very high. A thought suddenly appeared in her mind. This Han Shanyue could not be the emperor's incarnation, right? When this thought appeared, it made her tremble. Are you scared? Han Shanyue seemed to have sensed her inner thoughts and lightly turned his head to ask her a question. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat, but she smiled. A little. I haven't seen much of the world. You will get used to it in the future. Ning Xuema smiled and probed him. Heavenly teacher, you seem to be very calm. Could it be that you're already used to it? What do you think? Han Shanyue kicked the ball back. Lord Heavenly Master is unfathomable. How can mere mortals like us guess at will? You'll have plenty of time in the future. Just follow me and slowly guess. Damn it. This fellow's words were simply watertight. She was led by Han Shanyue to the front of the carriage. The style of this carriage could only be described with one word: low-key luxury. Black and white were the main colors of the carriage. The snow-white jade carriage was inlaid with obsidian with a faint luster. The shaft of the carriage was dark gold and emitted a faint fragrance. It was like a piece of jade. The sound of gold and the sound of jade echoed. Phoebe Jinan. No, this material seemed to be much harder than Phoebe Jinan. Her voice was also much nicer. This type of wood could be said to be worth an inch of gold. Normally, it would be very extravagant to make a small ornament, but who would have thought that it would be used to make a carriage shaft? Sure enough, it was the royal family's generosity. It was extraordinary. The old emperor really spent a lot of money to keep people here. Ning Xuema suddenly felt that the 100,000 taels of gold she proposed to the old emperor was too little. She was about to board the carriage under everyone's gaze when a voice sounded from behind. Master, I'm coming. Kiran was like a blue light, rushing from behind like a whirlwind. Before it could reach her, it suddenly jumped and threw itself into Ning Xuema's arms. It missed its master's embrace so much. Woo-woo. Chapter 434. Bang! Kiran was once again flung away by Han Shua's sleeves. This time it fell further and harder. Luckily it was a carpet. Although Kieran had the appearance of a blue cat, it was still a Kieran with thick skin and flesh, so it was not afraid of falling. Therefore, it involuntarily rolled a few times on the carpet and suddenly jumped up. It opened its eyes wide and stared at Han Shanhua angrily. You! What are you doing now? I have already showered. Return to your original form and follow behind. Han Shanhua glanced at it coldly. Why does a Kieran always turn into a cat? Kieran was speechless. It just thought that it was convenient. Only when it turned into a blue cat would its master be willing to carry it. It looked at Ning Xiuema with grievance, hoping that she would speak up for it. Although Ning Xiuema was unhappy with Han Shanhua's words, she was moved when she saw Kieran's appearance. Recently, Kieran had indeed turned into a cat for a longer period of time than when it returned to its original form. Originally, it was to hide its identity so that it would not bring her unnecessary trouble. But later, this Kieran seemed to be addicted to turning into a cat. It used its cat body every day. Even when it was sleeping at night, the mythical beast Kieran seemed to show signs of turning into a cat. Its personality was too cute, so she unknowingly kept it as a pet. She was indeed spoiling it a little. Therefore, she only nodded at Kieran, indicating that she agreed with Han Shanhua's words. Kieran had no one to rely on, so it was dejected and could only turn into a Kieran again. It was also angry and did not want to follow behind the carriage, so it ran to the front of the carriage and attracted the exclamations of the people on both sides. Ning Xiuema followed Han Shanhua into the carriage. The interior of the carriage was naturally decorated beautifully, and the design was exquisite and comfortable. This kind of luxury had a touch of antiquity. Can you let go of my hand now? Ning Xiuema felt that her left hand was about to be broken. Han Shanhua seemed to have just realized this. He let go of her and sat down on a brocade couch. Although the carriage wasn't small, Ning Xiuema still felt pressured to be alone in the carriage with this great god. Her eyes scanned the interior of the carriage. After she finished looking, she sighed in admiration. The person who designed this carriage is also an expert in layout. His vision is great. This carriage design is really not bad. Many thanks. Han Shanhua spat out 2 words. Ha. Ning Xiuema raised her head and looked at him. Did you design this carriage yourself? What do you think? Han Shanhua's gaze fell on her face again. This person was an all-rounder. Not only was he the art sage, he was also the music sage. Now, it seemed that he was also an expert in interior design. His martial arts were also very high. Was this person even human? Other people could spend decades or even their entire lives to reach his level of achievement, but it seemed like there was nothing he couldn't do. How old are you? Ning Xiuema couldn't help but ask. She didn't know if it was because she had been getting closer to him recently, or because her eyesight had improved from training, but she could now clearly see his facial features. Ning Xiuema thought for a long time about his facial features, but she could only think of one word: impeccable. His facial features were the most perfect. With such perfect facial features combined together, it made his face even more soul-stirring. Normally, if a man was too beautiful, he would tend to be more feminine, but this Mr. Han was not. His beauty was not feminine at all. One look and you could tell that he was a pure man. Chapter 435. Ning Xiuema even guessed that if this man was a lesbian, he would be a dominant top and not a submissive bottom. What are you thinking about me now? Han Shanhua did not answer her question. He leaned on the couch and looked at her lazily. Ning Xiuema rubbed her red wrist and did not allow him to fool her. I'm guessing your age. How old do you think I am? You should be 70 or 80 years old, right? Ning Xiuema asked tentatively. He looked like he was in his 20s, but judging from his temperament, he was definitely not. And he seemed to have been famous for 60 years. His martial arts were so high, he should have learned the youthful art like Yi Qingwan. Han Shanhua looked at her with deep eyes. 70 or 80 years old to you. Is it young or old? Of course it's very old. Ning Xiuema blurted out. At this age you can be my grandfather. Han Shanhua. Grandfather? He repeated, then leaned back and said. Then you can just call me grandpa from now on. Ning Xiuema. Then if she married him, wouldn't it be a grandfather-grandchild relationship? Although she would not marry him, it would be too much of a loss for her to call him grandfather from now on. Master Han, you look younger than a teenager. Calling you grandfather would make you old. I'll call you master from now on. Calling you master suits your style more. Whatever. Han Shanhua closed his eyes slightly. Master, I'm about to marry you, but I still don't know your name. Ning Xuema wanted to find out more information. Han Shanhua suddenly opened his eyes. His deep blue eyes were abnormally deep as he stared at Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema felt her scalp tingle from his stare. What's wrong? Isn't my name Han Shanhua? Isn't Han Shanhua your stage name? Stage name? Han Shanhua seemed to be confused. You're the art sage. Don't most artists have stage names or pen names? Han Shanhua looked at her for a moment, then lay back down and closed his eyes again. He only said one sentence. You think too much. Han Shanhua was indeed not his real name, but it had been a long time since anyone dared to call him by his real name. He himself had almost forgotten it. There was no need for him to tell this little girl his real name. After all, they wouldn't be together for too long. Ning Xuema did not believe that this was his real name. She always felt that his real name should be more prestigious. This name was suitable for an ordinary art saint, but it didn't match him. Forget it. Since he didn't want to talk about it, she didn't need to ask. She also wanted to have as little interaction with him as possible. This person was extremely dangerous. She had always kept a respectful distance from such people. Thinking of dangerous people, she couldn't help but think of the red-clothed evildoer, Shui Ilan. That bastard was kicked into the lake by her, and as expected, he didn't die. However, it was strange. Since that fellow had escaped danger, with his vengeful personality, why would he let her go for no reason and not harass her? Even if he didn't dare to kill her because of the oath, he would still take revenge, right? Why didn't he do it? Could it be that he was injured at that time? So he was recuperating these days and didn't have time to harass her? Or maybe he had something important to do, so he let her go for a period of time? Or Ning Xuema raised her head and looked at Han Shanhua again. Her gaze was complicated. Or was it because this person was guarding by her side, so he couldn't do anything? Chapter 436. What are you thinking about now? Han Shanhua felt that the little girl in front of him liked to be absent-minded. I'm thinking about the red-clothed evildoer. Ning Xuema had not regained her senses yet, so she casually replied. Ning Xuema was originally sitting across from him. Just as Ning Xuema finished her sentence, her body suddenly tightened. Then she abruptly leaned forward. Caught off guard, she crashed into his chest with a bang. Her nose bumped into his chest, and it hurt a lot. Hey you dash! Ning Xuema was angry. She covered her nose and wanted to jump up. Her wrists suddenly tightened and she could not jump up. She could only lie on his body. She angrily raised her head and said, "What are you doing?" At this moment, their bodies were tightly pressed together. When Ning Xuema raised her head, her small mouth almost touched his lips. She hurriedly leaned back and moved her face away from his face. However, this position was exceptionally close. They could hear each other's breaths. The unique smell of his body lingered around her nose, making her heart beat wildly. His eyes were like the deep blue sea. Their eyes were glued together. Ning Xuema had the illusion that she was going to drown in them. She could not move her eyes away for a moment. Master. Kiran seemed to have heard something. It slammed the door open and barged in. When it saw the scenery inside, it immediately covered its eyes with its two small paws and said, "I didn't see anything." It quickly rolled out. When it went out, it did not forget to use its two small paws to help them close the door of the carriage. Although the carriage had some soundproofing, it was not very obvious. Even a little bit of noise could not escape the ears of a martial arts expert. Ji Yunhuang led the civil and military officials to walk at the back of the group. When he saw Kiran go in and come out so quickly as if he had seen something that was not suitable for children, he tightened his grip on the reins again. His fingertips faintly turned white. The other civil and military officials were all smart people. They looked at each other and had a tacit understanding. Hee hee. It seemed that this heavenly master Han Shanhua was not completely against women. He had already done it with that little girl so quickly. He did not even let her go in the carriage. Inside the carriage, Ning Xiaoma was also speechless by Kiran's recklessness. Han Shanhua had already let go of her. She quickly got up and retreated a few steps. She leaned against the back of the carriage and glared at him. What do you mean by that? You are my concubine. You are not allowed to think about other men in the future. Damn it, when was she thinking about other men? Ning Xiaoma was about to retort when she suddenly thought of something and looked at him in surprise. You're not jealous, are you? Han Shanhua. He closed his eyes again. If you want to feel better, you can think of it that way. Ning Xiaoma decided to ignore him and didn't want to see his face again. She simply lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked out at the scenery. Both sides of the road had been washed with clean water, and the commoners who came to watch the show were blocked by soldiers stationed at every 3 steps. Countless envious and worshipful gazes landed on the carriage she was in. She glanced behind her, and her gaze met with Ji Yunhuang, who had just raised his head. Ji Yunhuang's face was slightly pale. He pursed his thin lips and turned his eyes away. Ning Xiaoma could not help but sigh in her heart. No matter what, she was destined to let down Ji Yunhuang's friendship. The carriage finally arrived at the Heavenly Master's mansion. Ning Xiaoma could not help but admire the power of the imperial family. In just a short period of 10 days, they were able to build such a mansion. Chapter 437. Ning Xiaoma had heard that this used to be a royal garden. Han Shanhua personally chose this place and renovated it according to his favorite architectural style. Ning Xiaoma was not sure what this house looked like before, but looking at the current Taoist master residence, 4 words appeared in her mind: quiet and elegant. Especially the 3 words Taoist master residence, which were extremely simple. Ning Xiaoma could not help but look at Han Shanhua. Wasn't this guy the art saint? Art saints were also calligraphers. Why didn't he leave his own calligraphy in front of his residence? Han Shanhua and Ning Xiaoma entered the Taoist master residence, while the others were waiting outside. Ning Xiaoma felt that this Master Han was not an ordinary pretentious person. It was just taking a bath and changing clothes, which could be done in her Jingyuan residence. Why did he have to go back to the Taoist master residence with great fanfare? It was true that his celestial master mansion was more than twice as big as her Marquis Jingyuan's mansion. The buildings inside the mansion were simple and unadorned, yet they revealed the luxury of a superior. There was even a hot spring. Wait a minute. Weren't hot springs rare in Changkong country? Only the Crown Prince residence had one. How come there was one here? And this one was much bigger than the one in the Crown Prince residence. That one was like a big bathtub, and this one was a small pool. It was a gourd-shaped hot spring pool. When Ning Xiaoma saw the hot spring, Han Shanhua had already finished bathing and was wearing a robe. His Taoist robe was different from ordinary Taoist robes. It was pure white like silver without any dark patterns. The sleeves were wide and the hem dragged on the ground. There were no patterns on the front of the robe either. There was only an ink-black obsidian embedded in the collar, which tightened his collar and gave off an aura of abstinence for no reason. His figure was tall and handsome. His black hair was not tied up and casually draped over his shoulders. As he walked, his hair fluttered along with his robe. There was a row of maple trees on both sides of the hot spring. It was autumn and the maple leaves were like fire. When the wind blew, the fiery red maple leaves fluttered and danced around him. They rose and fell with his footsteps, but not a single leaf fell on his body, as if they were afraid of tarnishing his holiness. Ning Xiaoma could not help but hold her breath. No wonder the ancients created a phrase called devastatingly beautiful. This person really had the capital to cause the downfall of a city. It made her heart skip a beat the moment she saw him. Even though she didn't like little fresh meaty boys. He sat down on a nearby jade stool and crooked his finger at her. Come here. His lazy posture unexpectedly revealed a bit of charm. Ning Xiaoma shot him a glance, but she still calmly walked over. What are you doing? Didn't I ask you to do my hair? Out of nowhere, Han Shanhua pulled out a simple wooden comb and handed it to her. Let me see your handiwork. Ning Xuema was actually a little embarrassed. She had never combed anyone's hair before. Moreover, she was lazy and disliked trouble. In modern times, she kept her hair short and neat. Usually, when she had to attend social gatherings, her skillful subordinates would help her style her hair. In this era, it was not easy for her to learn how to do 2 or 3 hair buns, and they were all suitable for survival in the wild. She couldn't even do her own hair very well. Now she was asked to do Master Han Shanyue's hair, especially his hair from the coronation ceremony. She felt a little pressured. "Master, it's better if you do it yourself." "I can't do it." Ning Xuema did not take the comb. Han Shanyue looked at her. "No need to be modest. Just do it." Chapter 438. He wasn't being modest at all. Ning Xuema complained in her heart, but he didn't seem to be giving her any room to refuse. "Fine, I'll comb it." Ning Xuema took the comb and stood behind him to comb his hair. His hair was as black as ink and as cool as water. The wooden comb could slide down to the top of his head. It felt good to hold it in her hand. Ning Xuema touched his hair and thought about her own hair. Damn it, her hair wasn't as good as this man's. She was a nimble worker. She quickly tied up his hair and pinned it with a cold jade hairpin on the table. His hair was done. She took a step back and looked at him. Her expression was a little twisted and she felt a little guilty. Han Shanyue seemed to have noticed something from her expression. Out of nowhere, he pulled out a quaint mirror and casually looked at it. The veins on his forehead throbbed. His hair was indeed combed into a bun, but the bun was a little big, like a ball lying on top of his head. She had also taken the initiative to let down a ring of his hair, which fell here and there in a messy way. This hairstyle, it was unbearable to look at. Han Shanyue had never been so ugly in his life. This girl did it on purpose, right? She was obviously not a normal person with good hands. He took off the hairpin on top of his head and let the ball of hair fall down again. "Comb it again. If you don't do it well, I'll shave your head bald." This was an original threat, but it was very effective on Ning Xuema. She was someone who liked to look beautiful. If her head became bald, she might as well bang her head against the wall. "I really don't know how to. I've never combed anyone's hair. Why don't I call a good maid for you?" She believed that many girls would be willing to do this. Han Shanyue looked at her lightly. "I only allow concubines to comb my hair. Maids can't do it." "So fussy," Ning Xuema blurted out. "Then why don't you take a maid to comb your hair as a concubine? None of them are destined to be alone. I can't bear it." Han Shanyue's voice was still faint. In other words, he only wanted to harm her? He didn't feel guilty for harming her to death? This bastard really didn't have good intentions towards her. Ning Xuema was too lazy to talk to him anymore. She combed his hair again. This time, there was a mirror in front of him. He saw Ning Xuema's every move behind him. He would give her pointers from time to time. In the end, he couldn't stand it and held her wrist to teach her how to do it step by step. His palm was warm and dry, completely wrapping around her small hand. That warmth seemed to be transmitted directly to her body through his palm. Ning Xuema suddenly felt somewhat hot, and her heart skipped a few beats. Finally, under his guidance, she managed to fix his hair. He looked in the mirror and nodded. "This time's timed. To practice, S's hair. TTT like the last time." And there was no. This time, she would choose to disguise herself and escape. She had already arranged all her escape routes. She looked at the gourd-shaped hot spring not far away and was puzzled. Is this hot spring natural? Han Shanyue didn't answer her question. Instead, he asked, "Are you going to the altar with me? Or are you going to wait here in the hot spring?" Ning Xuema was worried that he would keep dragging her down. Now that she had a choice, of course, she chose the latter, the hot spring. Chapter 439. Han Shanyue looked at her quietly for a moment and nodded. He opened his hand and a blue fruit appeared in his palm. "Eat this fruit." Ning Xuema looked at him cautiously and took it to take a look. The fruit was the size of a small apple, and there was a groove in the middle. There was a layer of light floating on top of it. She had never seen this before. She could not help but sniff it again. There was a faint fishy sweet smell. She had also never smelled this smell before. Don't worry, it's not poisonous. Do I need to poison you to kill you? Han Shanyue's voice was as cold as ice. He had pointed out her concerns. Ning Xiuema naturally understood this logic, but this person's thoughts were too hard to guess. Just like how she couldn't guess why he wanted to marry her as a concubine. She also couldn't guarantee that this person wouldn't poison her. It was true that he could easily kill her, but what if this fruit was a poisonous fruit that could turn her into a puppet? Maybe if she ate this fruit, he would completely control her. After all, this fruit did not taste good and it smelled fishy. This fruit is so green, it should not be ripe yet, right? I'll put it away and eat it after it's ripe. Ning Xiuema calmly put the fruit away. Suddenly, her wrist tightened and the fruit flew out of her hand and back into Han Shanyue's hand. Ning Xiuema was shocked and could not help but look up. You. Han Shanyue did not look at her again and ate the fruit in 2 to 3 bites. Then he glanced at her. This is the sky wind fruit. It is cold in nature and has a similar effect to the ginseng fruit. Drinking this fruit in a hot spring can cleanse the marrow and change the blood. It can expel the impurities in the body and heal all internal injuries. It can increase a mortal's power by 10 years, Ning Xiuema. So this fruit had such a great origin. And it was suitable for her. She couldn't help but hug one of his arms. She looked up at him and asked, "Do you have more of this fruit?" Han Shanyue looked down at her who was hanging on his arm. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to get close to him. Her large eyes were sparkling. And they were filled with longing. The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he replied straightforwardly, "No, this is the last one." Ning Xiuema let go of his arm in disappointment. Looking at the fruit in his hand, her heart was filled with regret. She actually missed out on such a treasure. "Do you regret it?" Han Shanyue's voice was calm. Ning Xiuema's face darkened. She was regretful, but she couldn't let the fruit return to its original state. "You're too defensive. You're too cautious." Han Shanyue pointed out the flaw in her personality. Ning Xiuema lowered her eyelashes. If she wasn't cautious enough, she would have died many times in this world. How could it be his turn to lecture him here? Not convinced. Han Shanyue tapped his finger on the jade table in front of him. Ning Xiuema looked up at him. She was too lazy to argue with others, but for some reason, she really wanted to argue with the person in front of her. There are too many malicious things in this world. If I didn't take precautions, what you would see now would probably be Xiuema's skeleton. Han Shanyue narrowed his eyes. He already knew most of what happened to her. Thinking about what she had been through these days, it was true. Once she believed it, she would be doomed eternally. Perhaps even he himself did not realize that his gaze had softened. "You cannot believe others, but you should believe me. After all, I am your husband." He was trustworthy. Chapter 440. Ning Xiuema mocked him in her heart. Wasn't he the one who caused most of her problems? Why is he pretending to be kind now? Ning Xiuema found a stool and sat down. She pursed her lips and said, "You said that I was a jinx and was despised by everyone in the city." Han Shanyue's eyes flickered, but he didn't say anything. Although she was despised by everyone in the city, didn't the messy peach blossom engagement disappear as well? "You secretly used a technique to seal my acupuncture points, and didn't let Shi Tianlong come to save me. I almost drowned in that deep lake." Ning Xiuema continued to complain. Han Shanyue still didn't say anything. His eyes were dark and complicated. He had indeed gone overboard with that matter. However, this girl was too good at seducing men, which made him angry. That was why he couldn't help but teach her a lesson. They said that I was a jinx and wanted to take the opportunity to kill me. I took the crown prince hostage and escaped. Just as I was about to succeed, you helped them to restrain me. Ning Xiuema still felt resentful when she thought of the situation at that time. "You can't escape." Han Shanyue finally said, "Lu Hin Ti trained a group of secret guards with high psychokinesis. As long as you leave the main hall and enter the 9 winding corridors, they will have countless ways to kill you. And they won't hurt Ji Yin Huang." Ning Xiuema was stunned. "Don't try to scare me. If Luhinti really had such secret guards, the crown prince would know and he wouldn't let me take him hostage. Ji Yunhuang doesn't know. Han Shanyue's voice was still calm. That is Luhinti's secret weapon. No one knows about it, and they only listen to his orders. They can kill the crown prince. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. Luhinti was a sly old fox. No one would really trust him when he was sitting on the throne. He would even guard against his own son. It wasn't strange for him to have such a secret army. How do you know? Ning Xuema blurted out. Han Shanyue's lips curled up. What can be hidden from my eyes? He could see where the psychokinesis was moving irregularly. So when you restrained me, it was for my own good. You finally understand. But if you wanted to save me, you could have taken me in as an art boy or something. Why did it have to be a concubine? This was the part that Ning Xuema didn't understand the most. If I asked you to be my art boy, would you agree? Of course. Ning Xuema replied without the slightest hesitation. Under those circumstances, she would have agreed to be his art's art. Han Shanyu tapped the table lightly. Then how could Emperor Luxian beg you like this? Why did he agree to so many conditions? Ning Xuema. She suddenly. It turned out that he had proposed such a condition so that she could take revenge on the old emperor. Saying that it all of this for me? It's good that you understand. Han Shanyue's eyes revealed a hint of a smile. He stood up. You can soak in the hot spring here and wait for me to come back. He turned and left. Why must it be a concubine? Ning Xuema couldn't help but ask the last question. Why not a wife? Because I only need a concubine. Han Shanyue's feet paused for a moment, but without turning his head, he threw out a blue fruit. Ning Xuemo reached out and caught it. Looking down, she was slightly surprised. Chapter 441. This fruit was exactly the same as the one just now. Could it be that the fruit he ate was just a trick? Ning Xuema held the fruit with mixed feelings. You don't have to believe others, but you can try to believe me. Han Shanyue threw down these words lightly, and left with his sleeves fluttering in the wind. Ning Xuema ate the fruit, and took off her clothes to soak in the hot spring. The bottom of the hot spring was paved with sparkling and translucent jade stones. Stepping on them was like having a foot massage. The sides of the hot spring were also inlaid with jade stones. She felt very comfortable leaning on them. After soaking in the water for a while, she could feel a faint electric current flowing through her 8 extraordinary meridians through the pebbles. After eating the fruit, she felt that her stomach was a little cold, but after soaking in this special hot spring, the cold and hot intertwined and slowly balanced out. The qi in her body flowed faster, as if there was a clear ice spring washing her meridians, driving all the impurities out of her body. This feeling was very comfortable. She soaked in the water like floating clouds. She couldn't help but lean on the edge of the hot spring and close her eyes. She didn't know how long had passed, but she finally felt that the water around her was getting hotter and hotter. She gradually started to feel uncomfortable and opened her eyes. But when she saw her appearance, she was shocked. Her body seemed to be covered with a layer of pale white scales, like some kind of oily mud. God. Although oily mud was expelled from her body when she was meditating, it was a small amount. It wasn't as scary as this. She was shocked when she saw it. She hurriedly looked down into the water. The water reflected her little face. She almost wanted to cover her face. Her little face also had a dense layer. Even the bottom of her hair had a layer. Damn, I can't look anymore. She hurriedly splashed the water to wash off. Not bad. These scales could be washed off slowly as long as she used a little force. She thoroughly washed herself in the hot spring from head to toe, washing off all the scales and oily mud. Finally, her jade-like soft skin was revealed. After thoroughly washing, she found that her skin seemed to be more translucent and smooth. Under the sunlight, it shone like a pearl, making her eyes almost pop out. She couldn't help but splash a handful of water. The water droplets scattered in all directions under the sunlight, shining with a rainbow light. She was only 22 years old in her previous life, an age brimming with enthusiasm. At this moment, her heart was filled with joy, and she finally let go of the uncertainty in her heart, revealing her childlike nature. Ever since she had transmigrated, this was the first time she was so happy. She did not have to worry about anything. She frolicked in the water for a while and examined her entire body. The more she looked, the more she liked it. Over the past few days, she had been injured many times. Her body had been bruised, and there were even a few calluses on her palms. Now all the scars had disappeared, and her small hands had become incomparably soft and smooth. Not a single callus could be seen, and they were as white and tender as scallions. The effect of the hot spring water was so obvious that she wanted to soak in it for a while longer. However, the hot spring water became hotter and hotter until it became unbearable. Only then did she reluctantly climb out. When she was putting on her clothes, she found another problem. Her clothes were too short and too small. No, it should be that she grew taller again. His body had also truly developed. This caused Shuama to be very surprised. Chapter 442. Before Ning Shuama entered the water, she was about 1.6 meters tall. However, after 4 hours of bathing, her height had increased by another 5 or 6 centimeters. Now she was about 1.6 meters tall. Her chest, which was originally as small as a steamed bun, had increased in size by quite a bit. When she wore her previous clothes, not only were they shorter, her chest was also squeezed uncomfortably. She had only taken a bath, but her body had actually changed so much. Ning Shuama stood there in a daze for a moment. Obviously, she could not wear this dress anymore. When she entered the Taoist master residence, Han Shangyue had directly brought her to the hot spring. She did not know the layout of the building at all. Where was she going to get another set of clothes? In the Taoist master residence, she did not know if there were any female clothes prepared. Ning Shuama looked around the shore, and her gaze landed on the small cabinet at the side. The small jade cabinet was almost one with the stone table and stool beside it. If she did not look carefully, she would think that it was also a jade decoration. From the cabinet door, a soft white corner of cloth could be seen. Ning Shuama was enlightened. She ran over and looked at the small cabinet for a long time. The small cabinet looked ordinary on the surface, but Ning Shuama had already seen that it was an extremely complicated mechanism. If she made a mistake and could not open the cabinet, she was afraid that the mechanism set inside would shoot her into a porcupine. Ning Shuama was not in a hurry to open the cabinet. Instead, she walked around it in circles. From time to time, she would knock here and there, pressing there. After a while, her finger continuously tapped on the jade cabinet more than 10 times. Her finger was so fast that it was like a flash of light. Finally, with the last tap of her finger, the jade cabinet door slowly opened, revealing a set of clothes inside. The soft silk was smooth to the touch. The style looked simple and elegant, but when she wore it, she looked like a fairy, flowing like the wind. After Ning Shuama put it on, she was embarrassed. This dress was simply too fitting. It was as if it was made to measure her body. It would be too fat if she added a bit, and too thin if she lost a bit. Obviously, he had prepared this dress for himself. Moreover, he had calculated her figure after the bath in advance. This person was simply abnormally shrewd. Ning Shuama looked at the spectacular view in front of her chest, and her heart was suddenly moved. Her current figure shouldn't be the figure of a 13-year-old girl, right? Obviously it belonged to a young and beautiful girl. Could this hot spring water have the effect of accelerating the ripening process? If she were to soak in a few more rounds, would she become a middle-aged woman? There was an antique mirror on the stone table. It belonged to Han Shangyue. He did not take it away and left it there casually. This made it convenient for Ning Shuama. She looked at herself in the mirror and almost dropped it on the floor. The mirror reflected her face from her previous life. It turned out that her face in her previous life was 70 to 80% similar to Ning Shuama in this life. It was like a miniature cartoon version of his previous life. But now it was completely the same. She had watery eyes, a straight nose, and cherry blossom-like lips. When she smiled, there was a hint of seduction amidst her innocence. The only difference was that in her previous life, she did not have this coral bean-like snowflake-shaped cinnabar mole between her eyebrows. Her skin was also not as good as it was now. Although her skin was originally soft, there would occasionally be a few small pimples, and 2 or 3 small harmless freckles on her cheeks. But now, those blemishes were all gone. Her skin was like jade, and because she had just taken a bath, her cheeks were slightly flushed. It was even smoother than a baby's skin. Chapter 443. She couldn't help but look at the hot spring. What kind of spring water was this? It actually restored her appearance from her previous life. Right now, she looked like a 16 or 17-year-old girl. She was like a willow branch in spring, about to bloom. She turned around in a circle, her moonlight white dress fluttering in the wind. Under the sunlight, it seemed as if her dress was dancing. Ning Xuema touched the cloth. She wasn't unfamiliar with it. When she escaped from the heavenly book mountain, she wore a man's robe that was similar to this. No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't remember who had given her this robe. She also didn't know who had helped her and Kiran establish the blood contract. She had all her other memories, but this one was missing. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember it. She had asked Kiran, but Kiran was even more confused. At that time, Ning Xuema faintly understood that her memories of that period of time had been erased by someone else. It was like meeting an immortal in the legends. After leaving the immortal realm, everything in the immortal realm was blurred. She had always treasured that robe. Now that she finally saw the same material, a question slowly arose in her heart. Could it be that she had a deep relationship with Han Shanyue in the heavenly book mountain? Was he the one who established the blood contract with Kiran and gave her the robe? The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. This person's martial arts were too profound. Perhaps he really had reached the first level of the heaven realm. Could it be that he and the ancestor were the same kind of people? Or perhaps they were originally the same person? She shook her head, thinking that it was impossible. The ancestor didn't seem to be that free. Moreover, the ancestor was said to be otherworldly. He definitely wouldn't want to take in a concubine. This didn't make sense. Perhaps this Master Han Shanyue was really a hermit, just not as flashy as the ancestor. She raised her head to look at the sky. The sky was high and the clouds were light. The sky was blue like a mirror. The sun had already moved to the center of the sky. It was almost noon. At this time, he should be on the altar to worship the heavens. Lu Hinti had created such a huge scene for the worship of the heavens this time. Those soldiers and whatnot would definitely be guarding the altar. The defenses in other places would definitely be lax. This was the best time for her to escape. If she missed this opportunity, she might not have another chance in the future. She lowered her eyes and looked at the beautiful dress she was wearing. She sighed inwardly. This dress was beautiful, but it was too eye-catching. If she wore this dress on the streets, she would obviously become the center of attention. It was better to find another dress to wear. Ning Xuemo ran out without even realizing it. When she was about to run out of the courtyard's moon gate, she seemed to have bumped into something transparent. However, before she could react, her body had already passed through. She turned around and looked at the door in surprise. There was nothing on it. Was that an illusion? Master. Kiran appeared out of nowhere. Just as she was about to jump into Lin Sanjia's arms, she paused and looked at Lin Sanjia with her big eyes. Master, you're finally out. I thought you had fainted inside and was extremely worried. Why don't you go in and take a look? Ning Xuema was puzzled. There is a barrier in this courtyard. If I go in, he will definitely notice me. He threatened me not to go in. Otherwise, he will send me to some barren mountain or river to train. He won't let me see Master again. Kiran felt even more wronged. Ning Xuema was speechless. Chapter 444. So it was not an illusion when she felt like she had passed through a transparent film. There was indeed a wizardry barrier. She could not help but turn around and walk towards the moon cave door. She carefully touched it, but she could not feel anything. She even walked back inside, but she did not feel anything blocking her. Could it be that she had broken through the wizardry barrier? It was too much like a soap bubble. Too fragile, too weak. Wait, if he could sense her breaking through the wizardry barrier. Did that mean he had already sensed her running out? He told her to wait inside obediently. She and Kiran looked at each other. Master, are we still going? Ningxue Ma made up her mind. Let's go. The heaven worship platform was located near the Imperial Ancestral Temple. The platform was tall and majestic, and it was completely built with white marble. Below the heaven worship platform, Lohinti led the civil and military officials to stand on both sides. Surrounding the civil and military officials were soldiers with weapons in their hands, who were under orders to protect them. They kept all the citizens at the very outside. There was a sea of people. It was really a sea of people. Almost all the citizens in the capital came out to watch the bustling scene. Perhaps it was because the order was maintained well, although there were 3 layers of people around the heaven worship platform. It was not particularly noisy. Almost everyone held their breaths as they looked at the person on the platform. Han Shanyue stood there in his wide white robe. The wind made his robe dance, and he looked like he was riding the wind. On both sides of the platform, there were 18 Taoist children in dark blue robes. They were holding a horsetail whisk, and all of them looked handsome and solemn. The positions they stood in were also carefully chosen. If one looked down from the sky, they would see that this formation was like a 6-sided snowflake, and it just so happened that Han Shanyue was in the center. It was almost noon, and the sun slowly moved to the center of the sky, shining right on top of Han Shanyue's head. Han Shanyue's white robe was fluttering. He was clearly under the sun, but there seemed to be white snow swirling around him, and it seemed to contain a huge amount of energy. The people below the platform wanted to submit to him, and they wanted to worship him. He seemed to be preparing for some kind of ceremony. His posture was calm and elegant, and his every move seemed to have a strange rhythm. There were quite a few women in the crowd below the stage. They stared at the stage in a daze, their eyes glued to the man in white on the stage, unwilling to even blink. This great master had obviously used some kind of spell. No one could see his face clearly, but his figure and a few movements were enough to stun all living beings, causing them to willingly sink into oblivion. Finally, it was noon and the sun shone down. Suddenly, the world seemed to darken, and the sunlight seemed to condense into a beam. The surroundings were dark, and only the high platform was bright. There seemed to be layers of golden light flickering. Everyone below the stage held their breaths as if they had seen a legendary god. One after another, they knelt down. The golden light on the stage was like the light of Buddha. After it condensed on the stage for a moment, it spread out in all directions like water ripples. The light of Buddha spread rapidly inch by inch and gradually spread to the surrounding people who were kneeling down piously. Everyone felt an indescribable sense of comfort as the warm sun shone upon them. Their hearts also felt as if they were soaked in warm water, peaceful and peaceful. Specks of snowflake-like light swirled in the Buddha's light, making people feel as if they had entered the sweetest dream. Excitement, joy, peace. The people who were illuminated by the light of Buddha began to burst into joyful cheers. As the light of Buddha expanded, the cheers became louder and louder. In the end, it was earth-shattering. It was like a landslide or a tsunami, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Chapter 445. Han Shanyue stood motionless on the stage. Just as the cheers were about to erupt, he clapped his hands together. The crowd's cheers seemed to be surrounded by an inexplicable force, condensing into a line. It was as if a dragon of sound flew into the sky. In a cave in the heavenly book mountain, a red-clothed man was sitting in the flickering hall, playing an ice-blue guqin. Around him were 8 young women in their prime. These 8 women were also wearing red dresses. Although their faces were different, they all had a pair of small and delicate hands. One look and you could tell that they were the kind of hands that played the zither. Delicate and white. In fact, no matter what their identities were, they all had one thing in common. They were all zither experts. They were the female leads in the case of the missing girls in the city. At this moment, they were sitting in 8 different positions. Their posture was also the posture of playing the zither. They clearly did not have zither on their knees, but they were all playing the zither. Following their movements, there seemed to be some kind of soft chi coming out from their fingertips. It swirled around and flowed towards the ice-blue zither on the man's knees. The zither was a 7-string zither. It was unknown what material the strings were made of, but they were also sky blue. There was a faint light flickering on the strings. Among the 7 strings, one of them was obviously dim in color, as if its charm had been sucked away and it was heavily injured. The soft chi coming out from the 8 women's fingers flowed towards the dim zither string. As the chi of the 8 women poured into the zither string seemed to be injected with vitality. Its color finally began to gradually brighten and recover bit by bit. As for the 8 women, their chi seemed to be slowly sucked away. Their faces became paler and paler. Their faces were blank. It was obvious that they were being controlled by the sound of the man in red zither. Their fingers were mechanically playing the zither, but their eyes were filled with horror. They could not control themselves. As the chi in their bodies was slowly sucked away by the zither, their long black hair began to dry up and slowly turned white. Their originally soft and smooth skin began to lose its elasticity at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wrinkles also began to appear, more and more. The color of the damaged zither string was finally returning to its original luster. At this rate of recovery, the zither string would be able to return to its original glory in less than an hour. The red-clothed man's forehead was covered in sweat. He stared at the strings with a warm expression. He was finally going to recover. Pride and satisfaction appeared in his eyes. He just had to hold on for another hour. Just an hour was enough. A pale white light flashed from the outside. Suddenly, the strange sound of landslides and tsunamis rushed into the cave. In an instant, it drowned out the sound of the zither. Not only was the sound loud, it also contained an extremely strong yang qi. It rushed in like a huge dragon, and the entire cave suddenly lit up. It was as if a super bright signal flare had been set off, so bright that no one could open their eyes. The women seemed to have woken up from a dream. Their bodies swayed, and their hands stopped moving. Bang! The string that had just recovered finally snapped. The string bounced off the back of the red-clothed man's hand, and then disappeared. The red-robed man sat there in a daze. He lowered his eyes and looked at the back of his hand. A line of blood slowly flowed out from the open wound. It was bright red and enchanting. Why am I here? Where is this place? Heavens, who are you? You're so ugly. Chapter 446. The women had already stood up. They were obviously not in the right state of mind. They looked around with a face full of surprise. When they saw each other's faces, they screamed again. Every young girl had now turned into a white-haired, wrinkled old woman. At first, they were only shocked by each other. When they realized that something was wrong with them, they touched their cheeks and looked at their hands. Then they screamed in disbelief. The cave was in chaos for a moment. After the women screamed, their eyes fell on the man in red sitting there. The man in red half closed his eyes and looked at the guqin on his knees. He did not hear the women's screams. Saint Master, what is going on? Saint Master, please say something. Where are we? Didn't you say you were going to teach me the most amazing guqin skills? Saint Master will not teach an ugly monster like you. Saint Master said he was going to teach me. The women started to quarrel again. The man in red slowly raised his head. When the women saw his face, they opened their eyes wide in shock. Saint Master, what happened to you? The man in red had blood on his lips. His pair of spring green eyes were also blood red. He smiled slowly and said, "You are too noisy." His voice was gentle, but his actions were ruthless. He made a move with his palm. His body was still in the same place, but the 8 women seemed to have their necks grabbed and flew to the stone wall behind them. Then, they unwillingly kicked their legs and stopped moving. The man in red kept his guqin and slowly stood up. His face was as pale as a ghost, but his eyes were as red as a demon's. He wiped the blood on his lips, coughed twice and walked out. As he walked out, the cave behind him rumbled and collapsed. In the end, the entire cave disappeared, and the mountain wall returned to its original state. Who would have thought that there were 8 women with great guqin skills buried in this solid cliff? The man in red coughed twice and looked up at the sky. The sky was clear, and the sun was slightly away from the center. The man in red slowly clenched his fingers in his sleeves. Han Shanyue. Who the hell is this guy? He was actually able to counter his soul-chasing zither. Not only did he ruin his plan that day, but he also ruined his plan to restore the zither strings today. Who would have thought that he, Xue Ilan, would encounter such a powerful opponent in the human world? This was truly beyond his expectations. That person was actually able to mobilize the yang-qi of the people in the city to fight against him. Not only did it destroy another string of his zither, it also injured him. This place was obviously not safe, so he had to leave first. On the altar, the thunderous applause and cheers finally stopped, and the world regained its former brightness. The white-robed, black-haired heavenly master had a calm expression on his face. He stood upright like a mountain and walked down the high platform step by step. The crowd automatically dispersed to the sides like a tide, and then knelt down and kowtowed again. If he had any doubts about this heavenly master's ability in the past, all his doubts were swept away now. This heavenly master had the power to change the world. With such a heavenly master in the vast sky nation, why would they be afraid of demons and monsters? This heavenly master's ability is probably not inferior to that of the most mysterious overlord, right? Everyone's face was filled with fanatical joy, and they could only kneel down and kowtow to express their respect. Lu Henti was naturally elated. Chapter 447. Lu Henti was naturally elated. Suddenly, she felt that the humiliation of agreeing to Ning Xuema's conditions was worth it. He led the civil and military officials to greet Han Shanyue. Han Shanyue nodded slightly and said, "The Guqin demon will not come for the next 2 months." Lu Henti's eyes lit up. He had been on tenterhooks for the past few days. He always felt that the red-clothed Guqin demon's blade of death was hanging over his head and would fall at any moment. It was not an ordinary worry. Hearing Han Shanyue's words, he let out a sigh of relief. He actually wanted to ask if there was a way to permanently get rid of that scourge. But Han Shanyue only glanced at him, and he shivered inwardly. He did not dare to ask again. However, in any case, the red-clothed Guqin demon would not come for the time being. He and the civil and military officials could sleep peacefully for the next 2 months. Not far away was the carriage specially prepared for the heavenly master. Han Shanyue rejected the banquet that Lu Henti had specially prepared for him. His sleeves fluttered as the people on both sides bowed to him and walked directly to his carriage. After getting on the carriage, he raised his hand and looked at the unremarkable jade ring on his finger. The ring, which was originally lustrous and glossy, was now somewhat dull. It was as if the outer layer of the ring had been broken. She did not listen to him and ran away. She broke the enchantment when he was concentrating on casting the spell, and almost caused him to be injured. Was it a coincidence? Or did she do it on purpose? He lowered his eyes for a moment, and took out a talisman from nowhere. When the talisman faintly lit up, he asked, "Where is she now?" A crisp voice immediately came from the talisman. Reporting to Dizwa, "She has already left the city. The Qilin divine beast has changed into a horse." "A blue horse?" "No, Dizwa. She should have put on makeup for the Qilin divine beast and changed its fur color. It is now a red horse." Red horse. Han Shanyue pursed his lips. It seemed that she was very fond of red. Dizwa, she has also changed her appearance. She now looks like an ordinary man. She was accompanied by a man. The charm continued to report to him. Han Shanyue didn't say anything, but the temperature in the carriage seemed to have dropped. "Dizwa, do you want to capture her?" A moment later, Han Shanyue's cold voice rang out. "No need, let her be." The other party didn't seem to have expected such an answer. After a pause, he said, "Then this subordinate will continue to follow her. If necessary." "No need." Han Shanyue spoke 2 short words again. His voice was flat as he added a few more words. "Don't bother about her anymore." "Yes." The other side responded. The voice transmission talisman dimmed and returned to Han Shanyue's palm. He supported his head with his hand and closed his eyes. "Ning Xuema, you missed this opportunity. I hope you won't regret it in the future." Just as the carriage drove out of the crowd, a shadow glided across the sky. Amidst the surprised cries of the crowd, A beautiful long-necked white swan descended and landed not far in front of the carriage, blocking its path. Who dared to block the path of the new celestial master? Everyone turned to look at the gigantic white swan, and they were all stunned. Two people jumped down from the back of the white swan. One of them was an old man with a white beard. He had a ruddy complexion and white hair. The other person was a young girl who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. Her appearance could only be described with one word: stunningly beautiful. Chapter 448. Two people jumped down from the back of the white swan. One of them was an old man with a white beard. He had a youthful complexion and white hair, looking like a sage. The other person was a young girl who looked to be around 15 or 16 years old. Her appearance could only be described with one word: exceedingly beautiful. There were countless young girls present, and there was no lack of beauties. However, compared to this young girl, no matter how beautiful she was, she would feel inferior. Her hair covered her forehead, and her eyebrows were slender. She was elegant and refined, as if she was isolated from the secular world. What was even rarer was that this young girl's body seemed to be surrounded by a faint layer of mist. Some of the more knowledgeable people exclaimed in a low voice, "Earth Stage Level 7. She has already cultivated to Earth Stage Level 7. Their voices were filled with disbelief. Only when one's psychokinesis reached Earth Stage Level 7 would there be such a layer of mist around the cultivator's body. One had to know that even the peerless genius Ji Yunhuang had only cultivated to Earth Stage Level 4. And this young girl looked like she had just reached marriageable age. How could she have such profound martial arts? Who was she? Who was she? When did such a young peerless genius appear on this continent? Countless people's gazes fell on the young girl, and they all began to guess. They also did not know the purpose of these two people appearing here. The carriage stopped, and the Taoist child leading the way was about to ask the two why they were blocking the way. The old man cupped his hands towards the carriage and said, "Is this Master Han? The master of the Tianqing Castle wishes to see you." "Grandpa, Tianqing Castle." Gasps could be heard from the crowd. The Tianqing Castle was the second largest family on this continent. Its reputation was not inferior to the wise king's mansion. It was also passed down through the family. Although its reputation was below the wise king's mansion, in the hearts of the people on this continent, the Tianqing Castle was more respected than the wise king's mansion. There was no other reason. The Tianqing Castle had many alchemists, many godly doctors. According to modern times, they were a family of godly doctors. In this world, doctors were a very rare profession, and those who could be called godly doctors were even rarer. However, almost everyone in the Tianqing Castle studied medicine, and everyone was a genius in this field. Their extremely mysterious secret recipe was said to be able to revive even the dead. When Ji Yunhuang was heavily injured, Lu Hinti had also tried to go to the Tianqing Castle to ask for help. However, the Tianqing Castle was too far away from the vast Sky Empire. So before the vast Sky Empire's envoy could reach the Tianqing Castle, Ji Yunhuang had already been treated by Ning Xuema. Doctors were people that no one in this world wanted to offend. Naturally, Tianqing Castle was even more so. Normally, any servant sent by the Tianqing Castle would be treated as a VIP by the nobles of the various countries. But now the lord of the Tianqing Castle, who rarely showed his face in the martial arts world, had personally appeared. Then the young girl beside him must also have an extraordinary background, right? Also, this Mr. Han's background is too great. The lord of the Tianqing Castle also bowed to him respectfully. One had to know that this old man was famous in the Jianghu for having his eyes on the top of his head and looking down on everyone. "What's the matter?" Han Shanyue's cold voice finally came from inside the carriage. "Mr. Han, is it convenient for you to come out and meet me? This old man has a treasure to offer." The lord of the Tianqing Castle continued to bow. The young girl beside him blushed slightly and pursed her lips. She seemed to be a bit embarrassed and a bit annoyed. The beauty was angry, and under the sunlight, her beauty was shocking. Many of the men present were dumbfounded by this scene. A treasure that the lord of the Tianqing Castle personally gave out must be shocking. Everyone looked at the empty-handed lord of the Tianqing castle, and then looked at the young girl beside him. Some people were lucky and suddenly guessed what was going on. Could it be that the lord of the Tianqing castle wanted to offer this young girl to the new heavenly teacher? Chapter 449. Luck with Women. What luck with women? But the heavenly master didn't seem to be interested in women. In all these years he had only asked for a marriage once, and the person he asked for was Ning Xuema. But the girl in front of them was a rare beauty. No man could resist her charms, right? The heavenly master had just taken in Ning Xuema, so it was not impossible for him to take in another one. Everyone's curiosity was ignited, and they all looked at the tightly shut carriage. It's not convenient. No one expected Han Shanyue to give such a straightforward answer. He seemed to have given some order to the child driving the carriage, and the child started the carriage again. The lord of the Tianqing castle also didn't expect such an answer, and was stunned. He didn't dare to block the carriage's path, and could only move to the side. However, he didn't give up, and couldn't help but say, "Master Han, I am here to repay my debt. I will never forget the debt of saving my life. This treasure was specially prepared for you, and I have raised her for 18 years. Now that she has matured, I dare to present her to you." When he said this, it was obvious what the gift was. The girl's face turned even redder, and she bit her lips even harder. Her cherry-red lips were almost white from her biting. Lu Hinti also heard the guard's report, and rushed over with the crown prince. Lu Hinti's face didn't look too good at first. When he heard the guard say that the lord of the Tianqing castle had come all the way here to give Han Shanyue a gift, he felt that something was wrong. He was afraid that the gift was too valuable, and that the heavenly master would be taken away by the Tianqing castle again. When he got closer, he heard the lord of the Tianqing castle say something about repaying his debt, and he let out a sigh of relief. He was only here to repay his debt, and not to take him away. As long as he wasn't here to steal his girl, then it was good. His face finally returned to normal. He was also an old fox, and when he heard the lord of the Tianqing castle, he knew that the gift was the girl, and couldn't help but look at her. This girl's appearance wasn't any worse than the current Ning Xuema. It could be said that the spring orchids and autumn chrysanthemums all had their own characteristics. But what was with the 18 years of nurturing? And it was specially prepared for Han Shanyue. Then, he thought of the Tianqing castle's medicine refining skills, and a bold idea suddenly floated into his mind. Could it be that this girl was a cauldron specifically for men to use to replenish their yang? Legend had it that there was such a woman in the world, who could practice a special kind of martial arts and had special abilities. Her cultivation may not be very high, but once she had intercourse with a man through a special method, she could greatly increase her psychokinesis. It was more effective than any elixir. However, in this world, there were very few women who possessed such a physique. Even Lu Hinti, who was used to seeing beauties, had only heard of them but had never seen one. Now he couldn't help but size up the girl again. His heart was moved again. If this girl was a super big cauldron, then she would be a good match for his son. Perhaps his son's martial arts would recover soon, and he might even be better than before. He glanced at Ji Yunhuang, who was beside him. This brat had been gloomy for the past few days. He had always been a man of few words, but he had been scarily silent these past few days. According to the reports of the servants, this precious son of his would often get drunk in the middle of the night. Many times, when he came to see his father, he reeked of alcohol. Chapter 450. At this moment, Ji Yunhuang, who had been expressionless all this while, also looked at the young girl. His eyes seemed to flicker. Could it be that this brat had fallen for this young girl? Lu Hinti did not know if he was happy or worried. This son of his was a genius and had always been arrogant. He did not care about any woman. It was with great difficulty that his heart was moved, and it was still towards that heavenly calamitous lonely star Ning Xuema. Even he could not stop him. Fortunately, that jinx had been chosen by the heavenly master. Although they were not married yet, his son obviously could not have any thoughts about her. Thus he was relieved. He was also afraid that his son would not like any woman in the future and be single for the rest of his life. Thus, he had been intentionally or unintentionally stuffing his son with women. There were all kinds of beauties. However, his son did not even look at them and rejected them all. Now he had finally noticed a woman. Moreover, this woman's background was not bad. If she was matched to his son, it would be a good match. If she was indeed a tripod, then it would be even better. The only thing that worried him was that this young girl was offered by the Tianqing castle to the Heavenly Master. If the Heavenly Master accepted her, then his son would have no hope. Lu Hinti's thoughts changed in an instant. Heavenly Master Han Shangyue in the carriage seemed to have been moved. The carriage actually stopped. The Tianqing castle lord's eyes lit up. Lu Hinti's heart was in his mouth. Ji Yunhuang's eyes also lit up slightly. He quietly took a step forward. If Han Shangyue agreed to accept this girl, did that mean that he was not determined to get Ning Xuema? Perhaps he would agree to cancel his engagement with Ning Xuema. Ji Yunhuang's hands that were hidden in his sleeves were tightly clenched. He stared at the carriage and his fingertips turned pale. The carriage door finally opened slowly, revealing Han Shangyue's figure. He did not come out of the carriage. Because the outside was brighter than the inside, she could only see his outline. The young girl in green suddenly raised her head and looked into the carriage. She could faintly see the figure of a tall and straight man. She could not see his face clearly. She could feel the other party's gaze on her. That gaze was cold and sharp. She instantly shuddered and lowered her head. Her heart was beating wildly. He pursed his lips tightly again. Ever since she was young, she knew that she was a cauldron weapon. Furthermore, she was a cauldron weapon made from special herbs. She was specially prepared for a man named Han Shangyue. Every day, she was forced to practice martial arts. Every day, she was soaked in boiling hot or cold medicinal water. The food she ate was also refined from herbs. Her life was dull and uninteresting, and she couldn't describe how she felt about Han Shangyue. Hatred? Disgust? Curious? Nervous? It seems that every emotion has some. She thought that this Han Shangyue would be an old man, but she didn't expect him to be such a cold and elegant person. Her heart was beating wildly, but she had no choice but to lower her head. She knew that Han Shangyue would take her in. After all, this great master also knew medicine. He knew how rare and hard it was to get a spirit medicine woman from the Tianqing castle, and how beneficial she was to him. Spiritual medicine woman? Han Shangyue finally opened his mouth again. He was indeed someone who knew what was good for him. That's right. The Tianqing castle lord revealed a proud expression. He was still very respectful. This girl is this old man's youngest daughter. Not only does she meet the requirements of being a spirit medicine woman, but she is also a genius in telekinesis. Her telekinesis has already reached Earth rank level 2, and her effects are even stronger. His tone did not sound like he was talking about his daughter's merits, but rather like he was promoting medicine. Chapter 451. The girl in green had already lowered her head, and her face was pale from embarrassment. So she was Earth rank level 2, but what was with the layer of smoke surrounding her? Was it something that only elixir ladies would have? Everyone was making unkind guesses. Many men were drooling as they looked at the girl. Treasure. It was indeed an exceptional treasure. No man would be able to reject such a treasure. Everyone's gaze fell on the carriage again. Tianqingyu, are you really giving her to me? No matter what I ask her to do? Han Shangyue finally spoke. The lord of Tianqing castle was called Tianqingyu. His eyes lit up and he immediately bowed. Yes. Good, I'll accept her. Han Shangyue made the final decision. Although this was within their expectations, everyone still sucked in a few breaths. How would this great master arrange for this girl to be his concubine? Would her status be higher or lower than that of the heavenly calamity star? Lucian Emperor's face was filled with disappointment. There was no hope for his son again. Ji Yunhuang's eyes lit up. He stepped forward and was about to say something when Han Shangyue spoke again. Tianqingyu, what do you want from me? Since you sent your daughter here, I can promise you one more thing. Tianqingyu's eyes lit up. He immediately lowered his head and said, Thank you, sir. I don't have anything to ask of you for now. I just hope that you can promise me that if Tianqing Castle is in trouble, you will help me once more. Han Shanhua said indifferently. If it doesn't go against the heavens, I will help you once. Tianqing nodded. Of course, of course. I know your bottom line. I definitely won't go against the heavens. Xingqing, why aren't you greeting your husband? The girl was called Tianxueqing. Even her neck seemed to have turned red. She stepped forward and was about to bow to Han Shanhua. Han Shanhua spoke again. Wait, I'm not your husband. This sentence shocked everyone. Everyone looked at Han Shanhua in shock. Tianxueqing also froze. She didn't know if she should bow or not. Mr. Han, what do you mean? Tianxing was also very puzzled. Han Shanhua said indifferently, since you gave her to me, then it should have nothing to do with you if I give her to someone else, right? Tianxing choked on his words. This is naturally unrelated. He had already given out the gift, so he really couldn't say anything about who the other party wanted to give the gift to. Han Shanhua no longer looked at him. His gaze landed on Ji Yinhuang, who was already standing at the front of the group. Ji Yinhuang's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to retreat, but Han Shanhua had already spoken. Miss Xueqing should serve Crown Prince Ji Yinhuang from now on. He is the one for you. Ji Yinhuang's expression changed greatly. His originally pale face became even paler. He opened his mouth and was about to say no. Unexpectedly, his back suddenly went numb, and his mind was suddenly in a mess. He couldn't help but say, "Yes, thank you, Heavenly Master." When the green-clothed girl heard that she was being transferred to another place, her face turned pale. However, when she heard Ji Yinhuang agree, she couldn't help but turn her head to look at him. When she saw Ji Yinhuang's face clearly, her eyes slightly lit up. Her cheeks flushed red as she lowered her head. It was obvious that she was willing to do so. Lu Henti felt as if he had been hit by a golden pie. He immediately laughed. Good, good. Chapter 452. Luxian Emperor felt as if he had been hit in the head with a golden pie. He immediately laughed out loud. Good, good. When these two children are together, they will be a perfect match. Fort Lord, from today onwards, we are in-laws. We will definitely not let Huang fail your daughter, and will make her the crown prince consort. Although Tianxing was a little disappointed, he had already achieved his goal. Using his daughter to get such a marriage was also a pleasant surprise. He did not object anymore. Ji Yinhuang's face was pale. He kept trying to say something, but his mouth did not belong to him. Not only that, his body did not seem to belong to him anymore. He slowly walked in front of Tianxueqing and extended his hand to her. Tianxueqing's face was bright red. She was so nervous that she did not know what to do. However, she still extended her hand and let him hold it. Ji Yinhuang could not help but hold Tianxueqing's hand. The hand in his palm was soft and tender, warm and delicate. His heart, however, was ice cold. Holding her hand in front of everyone meant that he had acknowledged this marriage. He could not go back on his words. Xuema. Could it be that we are not fated to be together? The carriage was sent off by the crowd. Inside the carriage, Han Shanhua's voice transmission talisman lit up again. My lord, what are your orders? The voice from the talisman belonged to the person who was following Ning Xuema. Han Shanhua was silent for a moment before he finally said, Did she stop when she left the city? Did she turn back to look? The person on the other side of the talisman was slightly stunned. He did not understand why his lord would ask this, but he immediately replied, No, my lord. She ran away immediately after leaving the city. She did not turn back. There should not be any accomplices who met up with her. My lord must think that she has accomplices, so he asked this question? The person guessed in his heart. There was no response from the talisman for a long time. The person did not know what his lord was planning. He asked tentatively, My lord, do you want me to follow her again? No need. Han Shanhua's voice turned cold. He turned off the voice transmission talisman, and the carriage fell into silence. It was unknown when a wedding dress had appeared on his lap. The fiery red wedding dress seemed to be woven from the clouds in the sky. It was soft and silky, and it shimmered faintly in the carriage. There was also a phoenix coronet beside it. The design was luxurious and unique. Not to mention anything else, just the luminous pearl the size of a pigeon egg on top of the coronet was priceless. His fingers slowly brushed past the wedding dress and phoenix coronet. Suddenly, his eyes darkened and a white light appeared on his fingertips. That set of priceless bridal clothes and phoenix coronet turned into dust under his palms. The sun was already setting in the west. Ningxiuema was resting on a big rock by the roadside. Kiran was still lying on the side in the form of a horse. He lowered his head and looked as if he had gotten himself into trouble. From time to time he would glance at Ningxiuema's robe. There was a suspicious patch of red on her gown, very conspicuous and conspicuous. Ningxiuema's escape this time was actually very smooth. She was afraid that Han Shangyue would send people to chase after her, so she disguised herself as a man and escaped. In order to make it more realistic, she even made a male companion on the way, and called him brother. After they became familiar with each other, they left the city together. After leaving the city and riding for a while, Ningxiuema found an excuse to break up with the scholarly man. Then she rode Kiran all the way. When Ningxiuema left the city, she vaguely felt that someone was following her. Chapter 453. When Ningxiuema first left the city, she vaguely felt that someone was following her. However, after searching for a few times, she still could not find the person who was following her. Her heart was perturbed, so she let the little Qilin run at its fastest speed. Like a gust of wind, after running for 4 to 6 hours, she was already 700 to 800 miles away from the capital city. The consequence of running like that was that Ningxiuema was sweating. The little Qilin was also sweating. Then the red paint on Kiran's body started to fade and stain Ningxiuema's robe and pants. Ningxiuema seemed to have something on her mind. The bottom part of her robe was red, but she did not seem to notice it. Her eyes were staring at the setting sun in the sky. From time to time, other passers-by would pass by, and every passer-by would glance at her. Kiran could not help but ask, "Master, do you want to change your robe?" Ningxiuema was still a little absent-minded. "I don't need to change anymore. I have already changed 3 or 4 sets of clothes along the way, and there are no more people following me." But your clothes are dirty. "It doesn't matter if it's dirty. It won't attract attention," Ningxiuema answered casually. Then she looked at herself and suddenly jumped up. Why? Why did she look like she was on her period? No wonder she felt that the passers-by were looking at her strangely. Could it be that this little body of hers was finally on its period? Ningxiuema did not have time to think so much. She jumped up and ran to a place where there was no wind, and changed into a new set of clothes. At this time, the pursuers were still nowhere to be seen. It seemed that the person would not send anyone to chase her. She did not need to wear men's clothes anymore. Of course, she did not dare to revert to her original appearance. She returned to the main road with her sickly face. When she was changing her clothes, she also noticed that her period did not come. Then the culprit that stained her pants red was, when she came back, she touched Kiran. As expected, her hand was red. She couldn't help but rub her eyebrows. The quality of the pigments in this era wasn't up to standard, and the color faded too badly. "Master, can I wash off the red paint on my body? It's so oily and uncomfortable." Kiran shook its body. It felt itchy all over, as if it was allergic. Ningxiuema thought for a moment and sighed. "All right, then don't turn into a horse anymore. Turn into a fox." Kiran was overjoyed and jumped up to find a place to take a bath. A moment later, it returned and turned into a blue fox. "Master, where are we going?" Kiran was at a loss. "To Daliang City." Ningxiuema had already asked the people along the way. Daliang City, which was the city between Chongkong Country and Xianming Country, was just 100 kilometers ahead. She would first go there to rest before heading to Xianming Country to find a place to settle down. Ningxiuema was about to stand up when she suddenly heard the sound of a zither swaying in the air. The sound of the zither was faintly discernible, like falling flowers dancing. Ning Xiuema had just stood up when she was shocked by the sound of the zither. Her calf accidentally hit a sharp corner of a big rock next to her. Her skin was cut, and blood immediately gushed out. Damn it. Ning Xiuema cursed under her breath and looked down at her injured leg. The crisp sound of silver bells and the sound of a zither gradually approached. Ning Xiuema raised her head to take a glance and saw that it was a rather luxurious and noble-looking carriage. Furthermore, the sound of the zither was not the blackwave zither that she feared the most. She did not think too much about it. She lifted her skirt and rolled up her pants, wanting to apply some medicine on her injured leg. Chapter 454. The carriage stopped next to Ning Xiuema, and a little girl jumped out. She looked at Ning Xiuema and asked, "Miss, are you hurt?" Ning Xiuema turned around and looked at the little girl. She was dressed like a servant, so she must be a maid from a wealthy family. She nodded and continued to apply medicine to her injured leg. "May I know where Miss wants to go? If it is convenient for you, I can give you a ride." The door of the carriage opened, and a beautiful woman appeared. Her voice was like a gentle breeze, clean and warm. Had she met a living lei feng? Ning Xiuema turned around and looked at the woman. She looked like a young lady from a wealthy family. Her eyes were clear, and her clothes were simple yet elegant. "I am going to Daliang City. May I know who you are?" The girl's eyes lit up. "What a coincidence. I am also going back to Daliang City. If you don't mind, you can come with me." Ning Xiuema glanced at the maidservant. That maidservant looked at her young miss with a helpless expression. If she was not pretending, then this young lady was always doing good deeds, which made the little girl feel helpless. Ning Xiuema smiled and said, "Okay, thank you." She carried the blue fox and got into the carriage. "Hey, it is okay for you to get into the carriage, but don't bring a pet." The little girl could not help but shout, "My young lady is allergic to pet fur." Before she could finish her sentence, the blue fox's blue eyes were fixed on her face. The little girl suddenly felt dizzy, and when she woke up, she was already in the carriage. The carriage started to move again. Ning Xiuema quickly treated her injured leg in the carriage. The girl in front of her looked at her with admiration. "Miss, do you know medicine?" "I know a thing or two about traveling." Ning Xiuema was dressed like a chivalrous woman for convenience. The girl looked at her with envy. "Miss, you are so free and easy. It would be great if I could be as free and easy as you." Ning Xiuema was speechless. Free and easy. She was now running all over the place. Every day, she was on the run. How could she be happy? Ning Xiuema was very good at reading people. Her eyes were sharp. After talking with this young girl for a while, she knew all the details of this young lady in front of her. The young lady's name was Yan Ziyuan. She was the only daughter of the city lord of Daliang City. She had gone out to watch the Celestial Master's enthronement ceremony, and had only returned after watching the show. Ning Xiuema had already noticed that the horse pulling the carriage was a rare good horse. Even in the royal family, there were only a few horses like this. It seemed that this young lady was very favored. This girl was only 15 or 16 years old. At first glance, one could tell that she had not experienced any hardships. She was innocent, kind, lively, and cheerful. Talking to her made Ning Xiuema feel like she was bathing in the spring breeze. Ever since Ning Xiuema had transmigrated, she had met many people who harbored ill intentions towards her, and very few people who were kind to her. Therefore, when she got on the car, she was still very wary of this girl. He was afraid that it was another trap. But after talking for a while, she finally let out a sigh of relief. She had finally met a truly good person, and not someone who was scheming against her. Yan Ziyuan was probably rare to meet someone she could talk to. She chatted and laughed with Ning Xiuema along the way. From Yan Ziyuan, Ning Xiuema knew about the miracle that Han Shangyue had created during the enthronement ceremony. She also knew about Tian Xueqing's existence. Naturally, she also knew that Han Shangyue had bestowed Tian Xueqing to Ji Yinhuang. Chapter 455. Ning Xiuema listened quietly. When she heard that Ji Yinhuang did not reject Tian Xueqing's marriage and even held hands with her, she heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she felt a little upset. She had a good impression of Ji Yinhuang and knew that he had feelings for her. However, due to various misunderstandings, she could no longer accept Ji Yinhuang. She knew that they were not fated to be together. This was also good. He finally had someone he loved and she did not need to feel guilty towards him anymore. But, was Ji Yinhuang really willing to marry her? With his personality, his feelings should not have changed so quickly. Could it be that Han Shangyue was behind this? With Han Shanyue's character and methods, he did not seem to have a bottom line. He could really do something like this. However, regardless of whether Han Shanyue was behind this or not, Ji Yinhuang marrying Tian Xueqing was already set in stone and could not be changed. After Ji Yinhuang was injured, he lost more than 2/3 of his power. If he really married Tian Xueqing, he would be able to recover quickly. This should be a good thing for him. When Yan Ziyuan talked about the new heavenly master, her eyes shone brightly and her words flowed like a river. Ning Xuema seemed to see the scene from her mouth. No matter where that person went, he was a shining presence. He only left the stage after the ceremony. When she broke his barrier, he probably did not notice it. Or maybe he did notice it, but he did not care whether she stayed or left. Ning Xuema felt that her mentality was a little strange. She was afraid that he would send people to chase after her, but he did not. She felt a little lost. After 2 hours, the carriage entered the city. Yan Ziyuan had already treated Ning Xuema as a friend. After entering Daliang City, she invited Ning Xuema to her residence as a guest. Ning Xuema actually did not want to interact with officials. She was currently on the run, and it would be too obvious if she interacted with officials. Thus she politely declined. Not long after entering the city, she parted ways with Yan Ziyuan and left. Probably because she was too tired, Ning Xuema slept in the inn for an entire day. When she woke up, it was already past noon of the next day. She went out for a stroll and bought some necessities for the journey. Just as she returned to the inn, she saw Yan Ziyuan's carriage parked outside the inn. Ning Xuema was stunned. Then she saw Yan Ziyuan's maid jump down from the carriage. "Miss Shui, my miss invites you." The curtains of the carriage were also half opened, revealing half of Yan Ziyuan's small face. She repeatedly waved at her. "Shui Shui, come quickly." Ning Xuema didn't tell Yan Ziyuan her real name. Instead, she gave her a random name, Shui Shui. Xuema thought that she and this Yan Ziyuan were just strangers who met by chance and met in the blink of an eye. Therefore, she was too lazy to think of a pseudonym. She almost forgot about it when she talked about the past. When he heard her call out to him, he was stunned for a moment. She knew that it was not convenient for Yan Ziyuan to get off the carriage, so she had to get in. After chatting with Yan Ziyuan for a while, she found out that Yan Ziyuan was going to participate in a zither recital on the boat tonight. Yan Ziyuan specially invited her to watch the fun and comment on it. It turned out that yesterday, when Ning Xuema and Yan Ziyuan were playing the zither in the carriage, Ning Xuema felt that there were a few small flaws in her zither music. Yan Ziyuan immediately regarded her as a bosom friend and asked her a lot of questions about the zither. Ning Xuema's zither skills were actually very good. However, after coming to this world, she had been busy running for her life. She simply didn't have time to play such an elegant thing. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.